happy 2022. We have a guest. We have not had a guest on the show for...
Yeah, it's been like 4 weeks because we had to pre-record some stuff over the holidays and we had to do some other stuff.
And then I just think we just didn't reach out to some because I think we were just too busy with everything else.
I think it was around the holidays.
Yeah, holiday season, we're not going to bother anyone. I mean, we did, but no one answered. So
we bothered them. They just didn't show up.
But we have a guest. I'm super excited. So we are doing Gun Hill Brewing Company out of New York. And we have Dave Lopez on the show to talk with us through the beer we're doing, which is Void of Light, and it is a stout.
Good setup.
I tried. One day I'm going to get way better at this.
Why do we keep letting Tiffany intro stuff? I don't understand.
She's not getting better.
No, the sad part is she worked on that today. I think in her head she was like, I'm gonna fucking nail this.
Very much so was winging it, and that's where all the random pauses came from. It's because I was trying to think about what I wanted to say while I was saying it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, no one wants to hear us talk anymore. Should we bring in Dave and find out about this?
Good Lord.
That was quite an intro.
Welcome to the show, Dave.
So welcome to the show, Dave. We really appreciate you stopping by, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So, question number one, right off the bat, is what is behind you?
It's actually a scarf that is in a frame.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very neat.
I didn't expect that.
No, me either. I'm always background driven. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on back there?
I'm not savvy enough to figure out how to get the virtual backgrounds working properly, so I just take something that is conversation worthy.
Hey, success.
Yeah.
Success.
Could be worse. Phil got a digital background and went with Murder House.
A murder house.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see what's wrong with it. So, Dave, you're at Gun Hill Brewery. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about kind of just Gun Hill in general and what's going on over there.
Sure. So I am one of the two co-founders of the brewery with my partner, Kieran Farrell. We started the brewery almost 8 years ago now. When we started, we were the first production brewery in the Bronx to open in a very long time. There were no other breweries that were actually brewing in the Bronx. There was another brand in the Bronx. Now, since then, there have been two other breweries that have opened up, but we're sort of just on the most northern part of New York City, so just below Westchester County. So we're a little bit further out there, and generally speaking, we get a little lost in the shuffle in New York City because of how far away we are. But we sort of we like to brew a very wide range of styles, both between our flagship beers and then all the one-offs and sort of seasonals that we do. The Void of Light that you guys are going to be trying today, that is one of our flagship beers. So it's one of our year-round beers that we're always making. It was not originally intended to be a flagship beer. It was just sort of something that we fell into. I don't know if you want me to talk about the beer now or you want to talk about it later, but I can tell you why we sort of fell into it. But
wait, let's make sure.
Yeah, No, we'll get into the beer in a little bit. I just want to hear more kind of about the brewery itself. Like, I know there weren't a lot of breweries in New York City in general at that point. What do you think? Like, why weren't there breweries in New York City?
Well, because real estate is expensive.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And it's not easy. It's not easy to find warehouse space that was affordable. So that's part of the reason why we looked in the Bronx is we wanted to find something that was affordable. I mean, we definitely had a lot of ties to the Bronx. We were either had family there or Kieran grew up there. I went to school from grade school through high school in the Bronx. So we had a lot of ties, but it was also where we could find some very affordable real estate. I think that was part of it. I think that the state was not particularly welcoming to manufacturing for a while. And then the previous governor that we had, Governor Cuomo, he actually created a new license that was very, very welcoming to the craft industry, not just beer, but also winery. So there was it was called a farm brewing license, and there was also a farm winery license. And so that was sort of promoting the idea of opening a brewery, opening a winery, also of to sort of help with the agricultural economy in New York and bring back really local. So once that sort of came into play, we started seeing a little bit of a resurgence of breweries. I mean, when we started talking about this whole process, there were only 6 breweries in New York City, and now we have 40 that are actually producing and a few more that are in landing, and that's been in 8 years. So it's been a pretty big jump in a short period of time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
That's a lot.
That's great. I mean, it's always great to hear, but I assume also with you guys being pretty far up, like you said, the northernmost part, has that created a little bit of like give and take or push and pull of how you need to distribute or how to reach out to other people when there's so many other breweries around now?
Well, it's made it so that we kind of are forced to distribute more than maybe some of the other breweries that are in the city who are in maybe more residential areas or areas that are just more heavily populated. Not even more, that they could still be residential like our area is, but they have bigger high rises, so there's more people there. So I think, our tasting room, as much as we have tried, it just hasn't been as big of a revenue generator for us as maybe some of the breweries that are in other parts of the city. And so as a result of that, like by default, we have to distribute more. So we definitely would consider ourselves more of a distribution brewery. I mean, obviously the last 2 years has sort of changed what that means a little bit.
I think everybody's a distribution brewery at this point. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yes and no, but I almost mean also like we've changed our distribution sort of model and plans over the last 2 years, just because of the fact that we've tried to avoid, like, some people, they were very tasting room driven. Then rather than changing their production schedules, they just decided they were going to continue pushing beer out and then send it all over the place.
Right.
We kind of took a slightly different approach, that rather than just pushing beer out and potentially having it sit on the shelf somewhere, we were going to scale back production a little bit, try and control things as much as we could, keep distribution more in New York and closer to home. That way we could actually try and control the product a little bit more. So that's something that we've done. We had been with a distributor throughout the entire state of New York pre-COVID. During COVID, we figured out that it was sort of in our best interest to go back and taking distribution in-house, so we could keep the margins that we were giving away to the distributor. And so by definition, that also shrunk our distribution footprint a little bit, because we are obviously not going to get all the way up to the northern and most western parts of the state, like Buffalo. So we've sort of in the last 18 months been really, really focused on New York City, on just the suburbs of New York City, and then also we still have a distributor in Connecticut that we use. So again, closer to home.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's actually a really interesting approach to the distro model that I don't think I've really heard that much from, because I think you're right. I think everybody like panic distributed, like, let's go as far as we can, send everything out, send here, send here, send here. But yeah, I think that probably did cut a lot of bottom line at that point.
Well, yeah, and the other problem is, sorry to cut you off, Tiffany. The other problem is it really is difficult with planning, because I think one of the things that we were realizing even before COVID is that everything is great. Sorry, do you hear the beeping in the background?
Dinner's ready.
People got to eat.
We were seeing that, like, it's great when you go into new markets, but unless you actually have boots on the ground in those markets, you see a big drop off after a period of time. You become the new thing when you first go into a market, and then you drop off. And so what we wanted to do is, rather than just pushing stuff out and potentially getting that big spike, that doesn't help us from a planning standpoint, being able to figure out what we want to do, how we want to, what size batches we want to do. I mean, we have the ability to scale up. We have a pretty big brewing system, but it doesn't do us any good if we're sitting on a lot of beer, or if beer's sitting out there and you guys in Virginia get our beer for the first time and it's 6 months or 7 months old, and you go, oh, these guys suck, I'm never ordering their beer again.
Right. True story.
So.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I was, if
that
we don't
being
have
said, we got this beer
people,
4 months ago.
We did
not.
not.
This beer's okay, though.
Pushing the beer.
Okay. probably better now than if you had gotten it
as a stout. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the only beer that you could have that is somewhat old, that are like saisons and things.
Do we have a barrel system question in trivia?
We do not have a barrel system.
Cool. What barrel size are you guys working on?
So we're working on a 30 barrel system.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good size.
It is a good size. I think if we could do it all over again, we probably would have cut that in half.
Sure.
Just because 30 barrels of beer at a time is a lot of beer, unless you have a place for it all to go, or if you have a really, really robust tasting room business.
Right.
Sure.
And when we were planning our business, just based on the location, the tasting room was not an initial focal point for us, just because we didn't think we'd be, we'd have the foot traffic. We didn't know, and so it was just different. So we were thinking we would just be distributing pretty much everything we were doing.
Yeah.
So we figured, let's go bigger. But the problem is that the way that the game has changed from when we were thinking about it to even 3 years in, everyone wanted what's new. Well, it's kind of tough to continue brewing what's new on that size system unless you can move it really fast.
Right.
Yep.
That's interesting.
So Dave, I first discovered Gun Hill actually through trying your Curtain Up beer that you guys did with Happy Hour guys.
Yep.
Which I was so excited to see that sort of cause, and then I've had your Rise Up, your Hamilton beer as well. So how did you guys get involved in that? Like, I don't know if Daniel and Tiffany know the history of that, of Curtain Up, but tell us kind of how you got into that and, like why you got into that.
Sure. So we originally, you mentioned the Hamilton beer, that is the reason. So I'll go back there first. So the reason why Curtain Up happened is because Hamilton happened first. And so when we started, and the name Gun Hill actually comes from the Revolutionary War. So because we were in theory Revolutionary War based, like the history behind the brand and whatnot, when we started out, we were naming a lot of our beers with some sort of Revolutionary War tie-in or war tie-in or Americana tie-in, I guess. And so we were making a beer at the time called Schuyler's American Wheat. If you've seen the show or you know anything, Alexander Hamilton's mother-in-law or his wife was Eliza Schuyler. And his mother-in-law had a wheat field up in upstate New York that she burned rather than allowing the British to overtake it and get the crop. So we named an American wheat beer Schuyler's American Wheat. Right around the same time that beer came out, Game of Thrones and Omegang started coming together to do their series of beers. And the Happy Hour guys, who were two Broadway actors that have this web series, they had this idea, like, why hasn't anybody put a Broadway show and a local craft brewery together to brew a beer and see what sort of connections they can make in that way, because those are two industries that in a lot of ways are linked together. And so one of them said, well, wouldn't it be really cool if we could get Hamilton? And again, this was before Hamilton really, really took off. Yeah. And they said, well, we have the perfect brewery, because there's a brewery that has a beer that's already tied into the show, sort of. And so they called me and they said, this is the idea we're having, that we want to do these one-off beers with the cast to brew for a charity, to raise money for a charity. You do a release party. We have all the, we film everything and then go from there. And they're like, would you guys be interested in doing it with Hamilton?
Oh, yeah, let me check my schedule.
Yeah, exactly. So I said, let me think about that one, sure. And, but to be fair, it was literally right before Hamilton completely took off. So we then had to get Hamilton on board. Hamilton, because it hadn't completely taken off, was still interested in being a part of something like this. Yep. And so we then, right around this time of the year, we went out for dinner with a bunch of the cast, talked about sort of the process and what they wanted in a beer and what charity we were going to do it for. And then we had them up at the brewery for the brew day. And then we did this release party. And the day before the release party, the show got nominated for all of the Tony Awards.
Jeez. God, good timing.
I mean, timing is everything. And so we were very, very lucky to be riding on their coattails, and it just sort of took off. And so we got a lot of the press that that I don't think this project and subsequent beers in the Broadway Brews project, which is what it was all called, the subsequent beers that other breweries made didn't get the same love that we were afforded because of the fact that Hamilton just became this mega monster.
Yeah.
So then, because of everything, we were fortunate enough to be able to get the beer into the theater where the show is played, and that's, there's like one concession company that controls everything,
Right.
and everything is very, very much like, I'll call it like affiliated beer, if you will. So not,
Yep.
and so to get that in there was a big deal. And then because it was the Hamilton beer and Hamilton was sexy, and this is no joke, Madison Square Garden took the beer in because they wanted a sexy beer, and so the beer was sold at Madison Square Garden. Then because it was sold at Madison Square Garden, Citi Field, where the Mets play, they wanted to take it in, and so it sort of took on a life of its own. And so we had done that, and it's been, I think, almost 6 years, and the beer is still being sold at the theater.
Spike Lee's got to drink something.
Well, it's not being sold at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, okay.
They went back to AB products a couple of years ago because they don't make enough money at the Garden on those beers, so they need to get the higher margin beers again. But so fast forward to 2020, you had All Together was being brewed. You had Black is Beautiful being brewed, and the Happy Hour guys reached out to me again, and they wanted to just get my opinion on sort of the whole process because we had brewed one of the Black is Beautiful beers. And so they said, look, the performing arts industry, Broadway, local performing arts, entertainment industry is really, really suffering. I don't think people are realizing just how impacted we are now and will be in the future, because this is not something that just, people are going to go back to immediately. We're thinking about doing something to benefit these guys, and we want to get your take on how the whole process worked. And so when we talked about it, I sort of said, well, I think we would like to sort of take lead on this, if you don't mind me, because I'm born and raised in New York City, and Broadway and live entertainment is so important just to New York City in general. But then I think one thing that was overlooked in this whole process was how important live entertainment is to the brewing industry, because of the fact that we have so many people that work for us, that also work in entertainment, that are trying to be actors of any sort. There are a lot of places that we sell beer to that are dependent on the crowds that are going to see these performances of any kind, whether it be live music, live shows. And so it was sort of one of those things where I was like, this just makes a lot of sense for us to really get behind and champion, because it's so important, not just here in New York, but anywhere in the country where there is live performance. If you go to a place where there is no sort of major theater production, you have local companies that are really, really struggling. Well, local breweries should be helping out those local companies. And so they called me up, and we started spitballing about how we were going to put this project together, and what kind of beer we thought made the most sense. We actually wanted to do, we knew we couldn't do a stout because Black is Beautiful. We really didn't want to do another IPA. What we wanted to do was some sort of lager, because we figured that would be just something that could be consumed. However, we were worried about breweries taking that on because of the tank space and the time it would take. So we figured the path of least resistance was an IPA. And so that's sort of how it all started. And to date, I think the number is around 78 that have either brewed or committed to brewing, and they're still now, just given the surge that we've had and everything that's been going on again, I think it's sort of come back back around full circle, where people are starting to pay attention again to this. So we're starting to see some more breweries have a little bit of interest in the project again.
Yeah, so from what I'm understanding, you guys basically made the base of the IPA, and then you sent out that recipe to anyone who wanted to kind of do it. You kind of gave it like an open recipe for anyone to kind of adjust it the way they wanted to, right?
Yes. So just similar to the other two beers that I mentioned, the other two charity projects, it's an open source recipe. So we did the base beer. We said, we had our designer do our designer at the time do the label for the can, and left space for them to put anybody to put any tweaks, put their own logos on it. And so
not yours,
what
Dave.
what we encouraged people to do was put any tweak that they wanted on it. And we wanted them to not even be constricted to the style. We wanted them to think out the box and really just try and use some sort of comparable ingredient. Whether it be keep the malt bill the same, and we had breweries that did fruited sours. We've had breweries that did some lagers. I'm trying to remember if we had any other really interesting out of the box styles. I mean, we did hazy IPA. That was the base beer. We've had breweries did West Coast IPAs. So we really wanted the whole idea was just to use it as inspiration, use it as a jumping off point. But the idea is more to be bringing attention to what's going on.
Nice. Great.
And I think we actually have a small video of your curtains up trying, Phil, when you.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's. Do you want to learn?
I don't believe it was Gun Hill's at the time, though. I think it was. Oh, Vera will probably look it up and let us know. I've had about, I think, 5 or 6 different curtain ups at this point. I've had 2 from Gun Hill because you guys did 2 different ones, right?
We did. So we did last March. There was a virtual festival, a curtain up festival, and we did one. So we got a bunch of breweries that brewed it specifically for that virtual festival. I want to say we had 12 or 15 breweries that did it, and so what we did is we sort of collaborate, because our version was gone by then. We collaborated with another brewery on the same beer that we had already.
Kind of nice, yeah.
But basically, when our brewer spoke with their brewer, I sort of said to our brewer, like, you guys figure out what if we hadn't said to you, this is what you're brewing, what would you have wanted to change about this, or what would you have wanted to do instead? What hops would you have wanted to include? And you guys talk about that and figure it out. And so that would be the second version that we did. We've only brewed it on our system one time. We're talking about potentially brewing it again, and maybe making a little bit of a tweak to it, but we've only brewed it only once specifically.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, let's stop grilling Dave and get in some trivia.
Let's let Dave have a few drinks while we start to play in some trivia.
We'll just grill him in a slightly different manner.
In a question form. It's like Jeopardy. So for those of you who don't know, this is the part of the show where typically we go through like history and facts, kind of. But it's really just trivia. We just can't get rid of that sound clip.
Right.
We created that on the very first episode where we thought this would be a whole history section.
Nope. Instead, it just turned into trivia.
I think our first couple episodes, it was going through the history because the beers were kind of more generic.
Yeah.
And then we started getting into the craft beer scene, and very few breweries have more than 10 years. So the history on them isn't really history. It's,
There's some history of these trivia questions, I think.
Yeah.
Sure. And there's also some facts. So it works out great.
All right. First question, true or false, the brewery's co-founders, Kieran Farrell and Dave Lopez, met while playing semi-pro baseball in 2004.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, does Dave look like a baseball player?
Well, it's not about that. I don't think we should stereotype baseball players. That being said, let me ask a general question, a follow-up question. Dave, how tall are you?
I am 5'8".
Okay, so not basketball.
Not bad.
I could see this. Yeah. You went to high school in the Bronx, so baseball in New York in general. Yes, I'm going to go true.
I'm going to go true as well on this one.
Vero is also going true.
Oh my God, I guessed before Vero put her answer up.
It is true.
It is true. It is true.
So semi-pro baseball. So didn't go further. Didn't want to. I mean, I'm just asking.
He started drinking beer, is what happened.
So there was about an 8-year period in between before I started drinking craft beer. No, I actually met Kieran playing on this team when I was still in college. So I was still in college playing, and then played on the play. I actually still play. So I actually run the team that we met playing on. So I'm still playing now.
Oh, that's cool.
I play with people that are now half my age, but
it's humbling, isn't it? No, it's terrible.
Yeah, well, it's humbling when I still think of myself as their age, and they're looking at me, calling me coach and everything like that. I don't.
Yeah.
But no, you can just call me Dave. Thank you very much.
Right. My father is coach. No, is that how he was saying?
We tried playing soccer not too long ago, and we ended up having to give it up because it just was so hard on my knees.
So old.
Everything hurt. All right, next question. True or false, Gun Hill Brewing is named after a famous Revolutionary War site they visited in Maryland.
Ooh.
So I know we talked about the Revolutionary War stuff. My concern is that you named something after anything in Maryland. Mm-hmm. That's a strike for me, so I don't want it to be true.
Yeah, I'm going to go with false. I think there's some trickery in this question.
Yeah, I am also going to go with false because I don't like Maryland.
It is false. It is.
Yeah. All right.
You were 2 for 2.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you.
The brewery, the Gun Hill is actually it's a site in the Bronx. There's a cemetery called Woodlawn Cemetery that's just not far from the brewery, and there is a hill. It's on a hill, and during the Revolutionary War, the colonists took all of their guns and ammunition, put it on top of this hill, and it was known as the Gun Hill. And so during this battle, they fired down on the British. The British retreated down what was then known as Kingsbridge Road, and they renamed it Gun Hill Road. And the brewery is basically a baseball's toss away from Gun Hill Road. We're about half a block from Gun Hill Road.
Very cool.
That leads you to some like really nice like logo and imagery for the brewery, I think. Like it's such a great time period to base it all off of.
Yes, except the last, not to get into politics, but the last sort of, call it now 5 years, I'll say.
Sure.
A lot of the Revolutionary War imagery, or particularly the original American flag, which we used, that was sort of co-opted, and it became a little problematic for us. So we've kind of done a little bit of a rebrand to making it a little bit more Bronx-ish and a little bit more edgy and New York City focused rather than historical focus.
Which I also think, though, in hindsight being 2020, based off of your distro model for the way that you guys started building that business during a pandemic time frame, that works perfectly, though. It's kind of hand in hand. Like,
also,
let's stick home. Let's take care of home.
These people need to know their history. Revolutionary War is not the Civil War, and that's what they're talking
this
about.
Is correct.
Next question.
We'll just keep moving.
Preaching to the choir there, that's all.
Yeah.
All right. When Gun Hill opened their doors in 2014, they were A, the second brewery in the area, but obviously the better ones.
Obviously.
B, the first brewery in the area for over 50 years. C, competing for their location with a new distillery. D, immediately forced to close their doors for many months due to a branding lawsuit.
Oh.
Ooh.
God, I hope that wasn't the case. I know you said there was only like 6, and now there's 40. So were you the second?
But weren't they the first in the Bronx? Isn't that what he was talking about?
Well, and I don't know what the area means. That's a little vague. There's some trickery in this shit as well.
Only one is correct that I know of.
I'm gonna say C, because I feel like even in Virginia, like liquor licenses have always been a little easier, and like it's easier to serve liquor than it was to serve craft beer for a long time.
Which is ridiculous, because I can buy beer at the grocery store, but I got to go to a whole separate store to get liquor in this state, and it is the dumbest thing ever.
I'm going with B on this one. I just think that they're probably just
talk to each other, and that's fine.
Oh, I said it right as that popped up.
So I will, Daniel, in your defense, because you seem to be the brunt of a lot of jokes about trivia, this is a difficult question in terms of the way the answers are worded.
Thank you.
Welcome to Tiffany.
The answer is B.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for not listening to me earlier when I mentioned it. Phil listened, but you did not.
What?
He did mention
Did you
it.
say that specific? I'm gonna rewatch this shit.
I did, and I knew it was a trivia question too. And I
Son of a bitch! Everyone's trying to trick me.
I even said, "Oh, I think I just screwed up a trivia question."
I assume that's always me though, so you're fine.
No, I did, but we were the first production brewery, like I said, to open in the Bronx since 1961. Rheingold actually had a facility there, and then they closed that, and so then there was no other brewery producing beer. There's a brewery called the Bronx Brewery. They were around as a brand. They were producing beer elsewhere, and then after we opened and started producing beer, they built their brewery, and they now make beer in the borough too.
Very cool. We're 3 in, so let's open this thing
You
up.
know, I already took it out of the koozie. I was like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, look at your fancy camera.
I know. Did you see that? Boom. All right. Next question.
All right. Boyd Light has won how many awards? 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I'm actually really upset that you didn't make D6. Just for the record, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Let me drink it first, and then I might know this answer.
You're
Heyo.
not gonna know the answer.
I'm not.
Darrow looked it up, but I did not.
It really is dark. This is an aptly named beer.
Yeah.
We'll just
I'm gonna go. I mean, this is just a crapshoot, so I'm just gonna throw out C4.
I've already seen Darrow's answer. She said 5.
Oh.
And that makes me concerned because she's correct all the time, which means now I have to like this beer like a lot because it's won 5 awards. Like Phil, I'll normally go anytime I'm not sure. I always go with D.
That's fair.
Okay. The answer is D.
Yes.
Wow.
So 5 individual awards throughout the years, all in the same year.
No, so it's won 3 GABF awards.
Yep.
That's the
And
Great
then-
American Beer Festival.
I understand that. I know what that is.
Not the mediocre one that we're normally drink beer from.
Correct.
And then it won this past year. It won a medal at the New York State competition, and then it was voted second in show in the overall competition as well.
Very cool.
Nice.
I mean, 3 Great American Beer Festivals. That's not too shabby.
So that's why it became a flagship beer, because we won the first one within 6 months of opening. So sort of like, okay, well, I guess we have to keep brewing it.
Yeah, well, shit.
I
there you
guess.
go. We're locked in.
I feel like a lot of breweries do that. They're like, oh, well, this one actually was way better than we thought. We should, and everyone likes it. So let's just make it some more.
Well, there are not a lot of breweries here that are making stout, a single stout on a regular basis. So it does help us out from a distribution standpoint too.
That
It
makes
doesn't suck that the beer is good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
You leave that up to me.
Okay.
No, I'm just
okay.
kidding.
This one is also already somewhat.
This one's already been done.
So,
All right, we'll just go to the next one then.
Yeah,
Oh, no. Is that it?
that's it.
Yeah, well, now you
Oh,
got
that's it.
Oh, you should go to the Untappd ones where it says like 2 not a stout fan.
Oh God.
Oh, that's part of.
We do this on every show, so typically we don't review the beer on Untappd with the person involved because
Right.
we know every brewery hates Untappd
Right.
Yep.
because it's full of people like myself who didn't realize you had already mentioned something. But we always go through at least a couple of other Untappd comments.
And
on
usually
this
rip
beer.
them.
There's usually always one
apart.
that's like, not a stout fan, too. Like,
Right. And I'm like, then why are you drinking a stout? Or
Oh,
like,
why
if
are
I
you
don't.
rating it? Why are you rating it? You
Correct.
correct that you drank it.
Drink
Why are
it.
you rating it?
You're right.
but don't
you're right.
rate it.
No, I'm saying-
I'm always going to fight this, though, because it does go back to I'm drinking it, I'm going to rate it low, because they're not thinking of the brewery. They're not thinking of the brewer sense. They're thinking of their personal, so that they can go back and go, look, I haven't drank a lot of stouts. I don't like stouts. That's how they learn.
But you
No.
know what? But that's the problem. and
it is a problem.
I've actually said this to the founder of Untappd. I've said this to him at GABF once at a brewery after an event. So there had been some beers consumed, but I said the problem is that there's no key. So
Right.
between the four of us, we all might have like a 3 for one of us might be different than the 3 for the other of us, or different than your 4.
Yep.
And there's no like, this is what a 4 should be, or this is what a 3 should be.
Well, see,
And
that's what we do on the show, though. We always talk about each one of us that checks in the beer and rates it says, okay, so I'm rating this against other stouts I've had.
And
anything
over a 3 is I'm going to drink it again.
Right.
Okay.
And then
anything over a 4 is I'm moving in.
But here is the problem: is that what he's saying is that could be the wrong kind of rating system,
because that's how
and you don't know, because like you rate something on Airbnb, if it's not a 5, that person gets real bad.
Sure.
Like they stop popping up. So I understand. Like Untappd is a real big struggle. I can imagine.
It's a real problem now because there are literally bars that put the rating on their menu,
yep.
and so or they make their purchasing decisions based on that. I've been at a place in New York City. Someone goes up to a big cooler. It's an on-premise, off-premise place, and they're sitting there and they're like, I see them scrolling through, typing in the beer names to see if they're going to buy it or not on Untappd. And it's like, make the decision for yourself. You don't need somebody else to tell you whether it wasn't even my beer necessarily. It just bothers me in general. It's like, I think, everyone's so quick to give their own opinions. What do you care about everybody else's opinions? We got all these social media trolls out there.
Easy now. I got a big following.
It's all trolls.
I've seen your followers.
Yeah. Not going well.
Yeah. That was a lot of dumb shit.
All right, so wait. So are we gonna drink this beer? We already did, but let's.
No, we gotta find out about it. So, Dave, tell us about Void of Light. What are we drinking? What should we be Run us through this.
Stout.
So I noticed that it's a foreign stout. So what? Give me the difference.
Foreign stout to us.
Foreign stout style.
Yeah.
So the foreign or export style. So the actual category usually at GABF is the export stout. It's also historically known as a tropical stout.
Okay.
Because it was originally intended to be sent to the Caribbean. So that's why it's tropical. So generally speaking, it is supposed to be super roasty. However, it is not going to be super, super thick. There is a little bit of like a thinner body because it's meant to be something that you could consume in warmer weather. So because it was sent overseas, similar to how the IPA was loaded with hops for preservation and generally higher alcohol, this style is generally a higher alcohol style of beer. And you're going to get really dark, roasty, almost like espresso or dark chocolate notes from this beer. What I like to tell people when they get intimidated by trying it because of how dark it is, I said, if you drink coffee or you like dark chocolate, you probably will like this beer. And it's something that really, really lends itself to a lot of derivatives and a lot of sort of creativity. So we do a lot of different variations on this beer as well.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's cacao. Yeah.
There is. I should also add, there is nothing added to the beer that you are drinking. So every flavor that you're getting is derived from the different malts that we use.
Interesting.
Oh wow.
That is fun.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, like you said, it is it's almost 8%.
Yep.
But it is relatively thin compared to like a lot of when you think of a stout, when you think of I'm gonna get this heavy ass beer.
Right.
This is really thin, easy to drink, even though it's almost an 8%er, which for me is perfect.
That's one of my other favorites about when people rate the beer and they're like, a little thin for a stout. Well, if you knew the style, then you wouldn't say that. But
I'm glad I asked because I was going to give this a terrible score.
This is one where even if you did give it a low score, thankfully there've been enough ratings on it that I think we're your one rating would not impact it too much.
I don't think you know how much clout I got on Untappd.
You know, we set ourselves up as influencers, right? Yeah, you're good.
You've padded your scores.
Yeah. No, this is really good though.
Yeah.
And
well, because I usually drink stouts in like the fall and winter because they are super heavy, and there's no way in hell I'm gonna get in anything shorts or like bikinis or whatever if I'm drinking stouts on a regular basis because they are like drinking bread.
Yep.
This one is like really light in body, and it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have our brewery is actually in a very Jamaican neighborhood, and so we have a lot. We have when we first opened, we had a lot of people that would walk in and sort of put their money down and ask for a Guinness or ask for a Red Stripe, and we'd have to explain that we didn't have that. We only had the beers that we made here, and then they'd see someone drinking Void of Light, and they'd say, "No, you do have Guinness. Like, what is that dark beer?" And we'd have to. They meant that anything dark was Guinness, or a stout was Guinness, and a lighter beer was Red Stripe. Just until now they don't do that. They walk in and they order it by name. But we actually still sell a lot of this beer in the summer for that very reason, because it is just a thinner bodied beer that actually is not gonna make you sweat more in the summer.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say that's always the thing with stouts and stuff in the summertime. I'm like, man, I'm already sweating. Like, just.
This is like the iced coffee of stouts. Like, I want this in the summer, and I'd be okay with it.
And it's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
If you think this is sweet, you should try our peanut butter version or our coconut snickerdoodle version.
I've had the snickerdoodle version.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one I had first, and now I've had this one.
Coconut adjuncts of any stout, they're my jam.
Peanut butter and chocolate. Put it in
my fooder. I can't not make a fooder joke.
There's always got to be one every episode.
Good one.
So Dave, thank you for coming on, but we know that you have an event coming up, so we want to hear all about this. I've got I even made a screen for it.
Look at you.
Look at that.
I like it.
Fancy.
So right before COVID in January of 2020, we had our first ever barrel-aged beer festival where we had just over 20 breweries from different parts of the East Coast come, and each one was pouring 2 different barrel-aged beers. Obviously, we couldn't do it last year, and so this year we're going to push through despite everything that's going on right now, because we have some rules here in New York City that require vaccination proof for indoor dining anyway. So if you're coming in, you got to show proof of vaccination, but that's coming up a week from Saturday. We have 25 breweries. I think everyone is either New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, or Massachusetts. We've got they've been sending me the beers for this event. It's thankfully it's not all stouts and barley wines. We've got a lot. We actually have a couple of barrel-aged pilsners. So there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that we're going to have at this event. We still have tickets available. It is going to be a smaller crowd. We have a limited capacity, but it's a good time.
That is exciting.
Yeah, very
cool. You guys want to come up to New York for the weekend? It's a long weekend.
I'm jealous.
So,
we might send Vero.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's true. We should send Vero. Vero, put it on your Wish You Were Beer Company account.
That's that LLC's on the to-do list.
Yeah, true story.
You should do that, and then go and ask every single brewery that's there to come on the show.
We do that here locally.
I know. We haggle so many people locally. Right. We were like, we got to start reaching out to Virginia because we're gonna piss everyone off.
Right. We do the here's our card.
Well, Dave, like we said, man, we really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The beer's great. We're gonna rate it, but we're gonna kick you out before that. But
Spoiler alert! Delicious.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
So
it really is.
You probably say that to everybody, but thank you.
No.
Trust me.
No. You don't want to be John Mallet.
No, I'm glad we all went there. No, but seriously, we really appreciate you coming by, man. Always great to have a guest
Hold
on.
Vero has a question for you, Dave.
Oh,
Okay.
She said, side trivia question, being from the Bronx, no Lopez, is anyone going to ask if Dave is related to
nope,
J-Lo?
I was avoiding that the whole time.
You don't see the resemblance?
I don't know. I haven't seen you stand up yet.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Touche.
Also, what's your brewery's hat game like? Is it pretty intense? You have a lot of hats, a few hats.
Hats. We only have. I think right now we only have one at the moment.
Is it a flat brim or like a?
No, it's a trucker. It's a trucker hat actually.
Ooh, you're speaking Daniel's language.
Yeah, I'll send you an email. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. But the answer is no. I'm not related to J-Lo. I'm not related.
Could have just left us hanging. We would have never known.
Hanging.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it for years.
My last name comes from the old world over on the other side of the ocean, not from down south.
Ah,
Oh,
okay.
fascinating.
Mine too.
Let's not get into your last name. Please don't put that in your no.
Then they'll find me.
Then they'll find me. All right. Well, Dave, we're going to cut you loose, buddy. Really appreciate your time tonight.
Care,
I hope
guys.
you have a good evening. And we'll catch up again throughout this year and check back in on you. And
I'm excited for your festival next weekend. Good luck.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Yes, we're going to try.
Do your best, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, cheers, Dave.